Good evening, everyone, and welcome into One-on-One Nightly. I'm Andrew Galata alongside Nick Feta, and we'll be with you guys live from 8:30 to 10 here on Twitter and YouTube. Chase Doyen will join us a little later to talk basketball and hockey. Also, Mets beat reporter Dylan Balsamo will join us just a bit to give an update here on the Mets' second half of the doubleheader today from Citi Field versus the Brewers. But Nick, it's great to be with you here on this jam-packed show. We got Subway Series, NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals, and a lot more. But first, I got to ask, how you doing?
I'm great, Andrew. I'm happy to be back. As always, happy to talk some sports, get going. Like you said, lots to talk about in basically every sport, you name it. So I'm excited. We got a nice slate for tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to start off with this show, just jump right into it with some baseball, and obviously a lot going on, Mets, Yankees, but I want to start off with the Mets, as we have here in our Zoom room, we have the wonderful Dylan Balsamo here live from Citi Field here. Dylan, the Mets right now, as a Mets fan myself, this has been just a breath of fresh air this season, and this last week has been just a roller coaster ride from all the comeback wins. I know they're down 2-0 right now, and now I guess they'll look for one more here to finish off the series against Milwaukee.
You know, refreshing is a great way to put it, Andrew. And thanks for having me on the show, guys, by the way. Always a pleasure to be with you, too. Now, refreshing is a very good way of putting it. You know, what I find interesting about this Mets team is that from week to week, they've been finding ways to win, but we don't really know what their identity is as a squad. And I feel like this week has really solidified who they are as a team. They're a come-from-behind, underdog, chip-on-the-shoulder kind of team. And it's odd to be that when you're in first place. So it's a very refreshing thing, as you say, for a Mets fan.
Yeah,
I'm curious, Dylan, about the last game. I got to just get to it. It was a roller coaster come-from-behind game. Jeff McNeil, the walk-off single. How was that? I just, as a Yankee fan, you know, it's been a tough couple of games so far. Obviously, the Subway Series happened last weekend. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I got to ask, how electric was the atmosphere in that game? Like you said, coming from behind, just how exciting was it to see that? And hopefully they can maybe pull something off like that in this game.
Well, for one thing, to your point about the Yankees, I won't be here for when you talk about them, but I think this is going to be a good week for them, so I wouldn't worry too much about the Yanks. Now, in terms of the game earlier today, again, today was a split doubleheader. I did not cover the first game, but I listened to the end of it on the ride here. I was driving here. And, you know, the excitement continues for the Mets. What's really interesting is, you know, over this last so we got a fly ball here in the left center field. And a home run. It's now 3-0 Brewers here.
Number 14 for Thomas. Homer number 14.
That's why we have the live updates.
Willie Adames.
That's why we have these.
Hold on, I just got to put it in my scorecard.
Oh, man.
This is why we got these live updates for the commentating skills from Dylan Balsamo as well.
I wish I called it for you. I didn't really. But anyways,
nice call.
A point I wanted to make is what we've seen with the Mets over this last week or so is they have not scored much in an inning that is not the seventh inning. But that has worked for them as a point of success for them for the last week or so. We'll see how long they can sustain that. Luckily, they have a good enough starting staff to this point, at least the front half of it, that they've been able to do that. But, you know, eventually that's something they're going to have to figure out, or they might just grow into.
Exactly. And, you know, you said you weren't obviously at the first game that Sam Davis was. He was covering the game. That was the Jacob deGrom game. And now, you know, who started this game off for the Mets, Robert Stock, who I think to most people, if you're not a diehard Mets fan, you probably don't know who Robert Stock is. And there have been a few of these guys for the Mets here in this, you know, fifth spot, the opener game, whatever you want to call it. And it's testing their depth for sure here at the starting, you know, pitching position here, especially those 4 or 5 spots. You saw injuries to Lucchesi and then Peterson. Where do you feel like right now, you know, they're at that point? Would you add maybe a depth pitcher? Do you feel like these guys right now are good enough? You're going to wait for Carrasco? Just, you know, obviously seeing Stock, you know, tonight live. Like, what do you kind of think of these last few guys in this depth of the Mets starting pitching?
Well, you know, obviously the front end is not much of an issue at this point in DeGrom and Taijuan Walker and Marcus Stroman. But, you know, and we got another fly ball here, foul ball. It's a strike 2 on Tellez. But the important thing here is the back end, in terms of the back end of the rotation, the Mets find themselves in a really weird spot. You know, you mentioned Cookie Carrasco. the Mets say he might be coming back by the end of the month. You might assume it might be a little bit later than that. Noah Syndergaard at this point might be a September call-up, which would be one of the weirdest September call-ups anyone's ever seen. So it would be odd for them to go and get a starter. I think they're just going to have to rely for now on guys like Robert Stock, on guys who are going to fill in for guys like Lucchesi, who were able to take the way through the beginning of the season. Luckily, this Mets bullpen has a lot of depth, and they've been pretty reliable at this point in the year. So that's something they can rely on for now. But it's a weird spot they find themselves in, and to be honest, I don't really know what the answer is.
And Dylan, I guess now we'll switch over to the bats, right? Pete Alonso been heating up a little bit. I've been slandering Francisco Lindor basically the entire season. Again, I'm not a biased Mets fan like some certain people may be, but I want to know, what are your thoughts on I guess the order as a whole? Who are you hoping steps up as the break comes to an end and as the future of the season comes along?
Well, what's really interesting is that this Mets lineup, more than many that I have seen come before it, relies on the production of one player to benefit the whole lineup. This is something Pete Alonso talked about in the post-game press conference after the game on Monday, because he's been on a tear lately, brought his home run total up to 15, 45 RBIs now for him on the year, and to just about the halfway point of the season. And he has credited his success this past week and Dom Smith's success this past week to productivity all over the lineup. And this is really a lineup offensively that, has had its woes all year. You can, credit that to injuries for all different sorts of types of things. But you look down this lineup 1 to 9, typically from night to night. It's a formidable lineup offensively. So, this was bound to happen. They were bound to improve. With a guy like Lindor, it was a tough start. I would attribute that to many things. Probably some of them off the field, just how big his contract was and how big of a commitment that was for him, and the psychological effects you have on a person when you do that. And that's something I've talked about multiple times on this very program. But, offensively, things are looking like they're just getting into the right place for the Mets right now.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it this weekend for sure, and that's what this make. You're hoping, crossing your fingers that Lindor comes around, but Nimmo, he stays healthy and in the lineup, getting on base. I think that definitely, you talk about the depth of this lineup, definitely so many guys, and I do like that the Mets don't have to rely on one guy. And I mean, we'll see if they don't have to rely on one guy to start a little of a rally tonight to see if they can win and come back at this game. Dylan, thank you so much for joining us and taking a little time out of the game here to talk some Mets baseball with us.
It's been an honor, you guys. I'm going to go see if the ice cream machine is still open. I don't know how long it stays open during 7-inning games, but I'm about to find out. So good seeing you guys.
Thank you, Dylan. See if the Mets come back.
Later.
Okay. So that was our Mets beat reporter, Dylan Balsamo, who is always great, giving some great Mets analysis here as they're down right now 3-0. You saw the live home run that happened during our talk with him, which I mean has to be one of the first here on 101 Nightly to have that live. I guess call. I guess at that point, but to kind of continue our Mets here. Obviously, they win the Mets talk here. That obviously they win the weekend series against the Yankees. They won the first 2 games against the Brewers, and again, I think this team, you talk about them compared to the Yankees, almost on different trajectories, almost on different paths. You talk about the Mets coming from behind, winning close games, and, talk about the Yankees kind of on the other side of that. And we saw it this weekend. The Mets win game 1 kind of in, easy fashion, 8-3. I think as a Mets fan myself, it was really nice to see them just win a game decidedly, which usually doesn't happen that much with the Mets. And then you saw game 2, Chapman, Cole, don't pitch very well for the Yankees. Mets take advantage, and then the Yankees end up winning that 3rd game. But to me, I think it showed that the Mets right now are a solid ball club. I think they play good fundamental baseball. Yankees, on the other hand, I don't really know what, you can say the same. And again, I think the Yankees, I think their fans, because they expect so much, Nick, I know you definitely do. I know 2 games over is probably, it's not awful, but I know to Yankees fans, it's a lot worse. They might as well be 5 games under. But the Mets and Yankees right now look on completely different sides. And I mean, again, I was talking with Dylan about like the Mets' 5th starter depth and that type of stuff. And the Yankees are having trouble with their first starter with Garrett Cole. And that's why I think it's just so interesting. You saw it in the series to kind of juxtapose the 2 teams.
Yeah, it's you're spot on. Hit the nail on the head. If you look back at that Subway Series, that first game, the Mets led 8-0 through 5.5 innings. So that was kind of in the bags before the game was even completely finished. Second game, Cole goes out on the mound. Maybe expect the Yanks to take the game 2. Hopefully they get into game 3 now, being able to take the series. But no, Cole didn't pitch great. The Yanks were fighting, but Chapman, of course, then comes in. He takes the loss in the game. Our 2 All-Stars, named All-Stars on that day, not so superstar status there. So that was extremely disappointing, very ironic to see, to watch, to hear the announcement. So that was just not great as a fan either. You never want to drop 2 games to the Mets. Subway Series means so much, really just for the city. And then that third game, luckily, the Yanks were able to take away a victory. I guess, there is an upside after that series last night against the Mariners. Yeah. Monstrous win, much needed win. Yanks scored 12 runs on 18 hits. It's always great to see, but my fear always with these guys is they are just out of gas after that one game. 18 hits in one game is ridiculous. It's a lot of hits. I would take 18 hits through 3 games is what I was saying yesterday. I was talking to my dad about it, but now I'm worried, they play tonight, they'll play tomorrow. Are they going to be able to function with their offense? They scored 3 runs on 3 hits against the Mets in the Subway Series. Usually 3 hits, you're not getting 3 runs, unless typical Yankees, there's a home run hit. Urshela had a 2 RBI double, I believe. But I don't know. I'm a little nervous now. The Mariners are a team they should sweep. It shocks me that the Mariners have a better record than them. It's not how it should be. But I'm hoping the Yanks can kind of carry that momentum, and they've got to have a fire and passion. To go back to what you said about the different trajectories, it's really the Mets are rallied behind each other. Again, they've come from behind so many times. There's such a good locker room energy there that they've just been carrying over game to game. Whereas the Yankees, it's like they'll have a couple of games where they win, and they're expected to win games, so they're not really riding that momentum, and then they'll lose one game in a close fight, and then another game tragically, and just like that, they split their last 4 games. It's not a pretty split, and then there's no sense of urgency. They've had a lot of talks, guys frustrated, but hasn't been a lot of evidence to show for it. That's my real concern. I don't want the Yanks to limp into the All-Star break. I want them to come with some momentum going into it. That way they can carry it out once the break is over. We'll see how that works though, as the game comes up later next week.
Exactly. I mean, as you said with the Yankees, I mean, this team is just it befuddles me with the situation that they're in, and you just look at these good players it's just you talk about all these good players, and you see that, as you said, you saw them win. They won 12-1, but then I remember we were in pre-production yesterday, and you were talking about how the Mariners were 2.5 games better than the Yankees, and I was like, what? I was so surprised that was the case, and I was like, I had to look on ESPN. I was like, are the Mariners that good? That they're even over 500, but are the Yankees worse than them? And that's just something that it really is befuddling. When you look at the Yankees, and to me, this you look at the Cole and Chapman stuff, which is obviously the biggest I think story from this series, but it may as well be going forward, because the Yankees are going to need these 2 guys if they're going to do anything. If they're going to come back, make the wild card, and make some noise in the playoffs, it's going to be because of Garrett Cole starting and pitching great. And we all know the reasons of why, maybe the dip has happened. We've talked about it so much. I don't really want to get into the sticky substance argument again, but we all know why this whole thing's happening with Cole. Chapman, I mean, he just goes through these stretches. I mean, I feel like, this is not the first time he's done it. And it's just one of those things. I mean, when you're going up against the team with the Chapman, when Chapman's not going well, and you feel like when you're down a run in the 7th, like it was against the Mets, or the 9th in a normal game, you just feel so much better about going into that final inning. Even as a Mets fan, when the Mets were down 4-1, in a 7-inning game in the 4th inning against Garrett Cole, and you knew Chapman was looming, I didn't feel that worried. I felt the Mets had a chance to come back, which is probably something you shouldn't feel with your ace on the mound, with your closer well rested, and that's all-star closer and all-star pitcher. And that's, I think, the biggest thing with the Yankees is that right now, usually the Yankees are known for being the big, scary Yankees. And right now they're not that, even though you have players on the team that, you have really good players, but they're just not coming through in big moments, making errors. And that's, to me, the biggest befuddling part, and the biggest really part of worrisome, for this Yankees team really going into the All-Star break.
Yeah, I've feared Chapman being on the mound for a while now. I haven't had much confidence in his stuff really since last season. He gave up home run, and goodbye, Yanks out of the playoffs. Just like that. Since then I've wanted to give up on him, and then it's just crazy because he shows some spurts. He throws so hard. He's so intimidating, so menacing. But when he's not on his game, like you said, he's really not. You think, okay, we got a chance. And you're right. That's what really concerns me with him. Chapman posted, I remember very recently, a big message on his Instagram page, kind of saying, what my losses don't define me. It's how I get through them. Yeah, but get through them, please. It hasn't really been seen this year. I was honestly surprised he was named an All-Star. He had a fantastic stretch of games, so that's probably what carried him through. But he's been very subpar to below average recently. And then with Cole, it's kind of the same thing. He came out, Garrett Cole, in the first few weeks of the season. Exactly what I think most fans expected. It was really him and DeGrom those first few weeks were just neck and neck as, who's the pitcher in New York? But obviously as time went, there's not much discussion anymore. As biased as a Yankee fan could be, I don't think you can even argue. But, Cole, he's supposed to be there, and I think he will. I think he will get back. He's a guy I think who has an attitude where he's very frustrated with himself when he plays poorly. Most athletes are, of course, but I think he's going to bounce back and be able to find something in the second half of the season. Because really, again, I think he realizes, Boone realizes, and the entire Yankee organization realizes he's the ace. If he doesn't bounce back, they could be in some trouble. They get to that wild card game, they can limp there. Who's pitching? It's supposed to be Cole, and you love that idea. But if he's not on his A game, and then you got to bring Chapman into close, right? Oh man, I'm shaking in my boots, right? You're worried. Any Yankee fans worried in that situation, just like you said, how you were watching and you were almost thinking there's a glimmer of hope here. And that's the problem with this team that had World Series hopes and aspirations. You can't have your one guy from the start and your one guy at the end be shaky throughout a half season. You need it to step up. It's just that simple.
Exactly. When you're paying them all that money too. I mean, it's not like these guys are on a rookie contract here. I mean, these guys are getting paid a ton of money. Obviously, Cole, everyone talks about the $300+ million, and Chapman got a big contract himself. And you got to lean on those guys, especially when you're not going well. And I think that was kind of the climax of that series. And obviously, the Mets feel good after it. Yankees don't feel so good. They win though that game against the Mariners. Mets have kept the good times rolling. Just keep on coming back. I mean, the comeback kids, that's really what the Mets are. I mean, today you had Jose Peraza, of all people, hit a home run off Josh Hader, who had a lower ERA than DeGrom going into this game. So, or the first game. So that was definitely interesting. And these two teams, obviously heading into the All-Star break, to me, they're two different teams. I honestly think the Mets, they'll definitely be looking to add, I think, looking towards the All-Star break. And I think, I even talked about it with Dylan a bit before, but I want to talk about this Yankees team going into this trade deadline, especially if they kind of hover around this 500 point. To me, they go into a huge crossroads to build a team that could, get into the wild card, make a run at the World Series. Do you reinforce this roster, or do you start taking pieces apart here that you can maybe trade off, get some prospects, and, just admit that this team was flawed and, they weren't the team to do it. And Nick, as a Yankees fan, I definitely want to know your opinion, because I've heard both sides. I've heard the all the way on the extreme trade Judge, trade him at the top. I've heard the other side go after, a big starting pitcher or a position player. So what are you thinking going into this trade deadline? I think it's really fascinating what this Yankees team can do here, or maybe they'll just stay put, which is kind of the Yankee way.
Yeah, I could argue for both sides very easily. It's just been extremely frustrating seeing. It is a bit of a privilege. Obviously, the Yanks have been very good for the past few years, getting to the playoffs, but not reaching the World Series since, this team has really been put together, the foundation, the core. That being said, they've shown they have the potential to get there. It's just they haven't. So I've been very iffy, very frustrated. Last season was hard to count in its entirety. 60-game season, guys not really playing in their entirety of getting in the groove per se. But it was just very frustrating seeing the Yanks get knocked out that early by a Rays team that was much, much better. But yeah, I could see this season is obviously not going how I think any Yankee fan or baseball fan has predicted for these guys. If they were even 6 or 7 games above right now instead of 2 or 3, it would be a little more confidence. I mean, I don't think there's a chance they catch the Red Sox. They're all the way up top, 20 games above 500.
Also, the Yankees can't win a game against the Red Sox as well.
And they can't, exactly. We've been swept twice. So it's just, that's those games, those moments are when I want to say, I'll blow this up, get rid of it. A moment where I was at the Yankee game where Shohei Ohtani made his debut pitching in the Bronx. He gives up 7 earned runs in the first inning, bunch of rain delays. 5 hours later, the Yankees end up losing the game 11-8. So it's just those moments where I say, screw this, get rid of this team. But at the same time, you see last night, they scored 12 runs, 18 hits. Voit, MVP candidate last year, had a career-high 5-hit game. Judge will always be there. LeMahieu is slow and steady, kind of starting to pick up. The pieces are there. They always have been. It's just they haven't been performing. So I want to keep it going I want to say one more year because, if these guys do make a run to squeak their way into the wild card spot, I mean, I don't think the AL East is remotely reasonable anymore. But if they can squeak their way into the wild card, anything can happen. Once you get in, you win that wild card game, you go into series, and baseball always is about who's hot. And if the Yankees can finally get hot for the postseason, which they really have never been in the postseason, that could be their difference. I want to see it happen. Do I have much faith? Not necessarily, but I'm kind of throwing the Hail Mary and hoping because if the team gets blown up, then you're looking at a lot of years of mediocre baseball or potentially not so great baseball. So I want to see it one more year. I want to see them kind of finish this, have a little pride, guts, integrity, and get something going in the last half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because, going into the year, I was in the kind of the camp where this Yankees team didn't do enough in the offseason. I thought they were good enough. I didn't think they were, this bad. I mean, I thought they were going to win the division, I thought. But, I didn't think they had enough to win the World Series. I didn't think they had enough pitching. And, you saw now the situation where you're 2 games over 500. You didn't hit your expectations so far. And it's, I would try to maybe add a piece here. And I know that I think the division, I agree, is out of reach, but the wild card and just the way it's set up, if you can win that game, you're hoping Cole kind of returns to some semblance of his ace status. And if he can go win you a wild card game, then you're talking about, a playoff series. And as you said, anyone who gets hot, if you bring in a pitcher that, could be that 2 to Cole, and we don't know what's going to happen with Kluber and his health, Severino, all these question marks. So you bring in another guy, maybe you don't bring in anyone that's like a stud. Maybe you do. Maybe you go out, get a Jose Barrios from the Twins and, you trade some assets and, you get a player, whoever it may be to put you over that. Just, we're a 500 baseball team. Let's, because in 2015, the Mets were, we were a 500 baseball team. They had Yoenis Cespedes. Yes, that's a once a generation run that he had where he hit 18 home runs in 40 games. But you never know until, you pull the trigger and you make the deal. Now, the Yankees and Cashman, they're not really apt to make those big deadline splashes, and obviously you have to give to get. But, you can see something if the Yankees go out, make a deal, that lights a spark under a guy like you were saying, DJ LeMahieu. Is he going to become a 330 hitter again? Because if he is, you have Judge, all-star. He's at, definitely the top of his game. You're hoping maybe Stanton hits one of his runs. To me, it's such an interesting, dynamic because as bad as this or inconsistent as this Yankees team has been, there's so much talent. That's like when I was watching them this weekend, this is really the first time I sat down and watched the Yankees. Obviously it was against the Mets, but I was like, why is this talent? The lineup so deep. Why aren't they coming through? And maybe they just need a piece, whether it be a lineup piece, whether it be starting pitching to just light a fire under them. I don't know if that would do anything, but I don't know. I feel like this team to blow it up, I would do one or the other. I would either go out, trade everybody or trade some pieces, or go out, get a player and say, we're serious about this. We're not 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, they need, I was going to say needed, I don't know why, but they need a spark. It's just, I don't know really necessarily who. I liked the name Ketel Marte from the Diamondbacks. He's one of their only shining points, really. Yeah. But then we went out and got Tim LeCastro, who is a kind of a bench bat at most. I've said this before, as much as I absolutely love Brett Gardner, the longest tenured Yankee. I went to his first game. My first baseball game was his first game. As much as I love that guy, I don't think he should be a starter anymore. He's
not a starter on a playoff team.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
It's
Nothing against him. He had a great career with the Yankees, but I mean, the guy's 37, I think.
37.
He's not a starter on a playoff team, and go out and get a center fielder.
I love the guy, but he should not be playing center field for us anymore. Those days, I thought they were over a couple of years ago. They weren't, and he had a couple other pretty solid seasons he put together. Yeah. But now, no, it's just not a playoff team. Has 37-year-old Brett Gardner starting. Someone should be there in that place. I know there's been some injury issues. Aaron Hicks is supposed to be there, but even Hicks was having a mediocre season thus far. His signing is controversial as well. He got a lot of money from the Yanks. I don't love Miguel Andujar in left field. I think he looks scared, not really in the moment. If you watch him field a fly ball, he kind of looks childish out there, taking steps back, taking steps in. They got to make some sort of move to find a spark. It's just the question is, who can you move without blowing it up? I know it's kind of picky, but that would be my ideal scenario.
Exactly.
Get someone, provide a little fire to get going. The question is, who goes then? Maybe, I don't know, Clint Frazier. I don't know what his value is anymore. It used to be high. I don't think it's high anymore. But it's tough. That's what the GMs are for.
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my guy has always been Charlie Blackmon to this Yankees team, and we'll see where the Rockies are. But I think he'd be a professional guy that could take at bats, and that's just so important to lengthen the lineup out. Maybe I don't think it'll cost that much, and maybe you can go out and then get a pitcher and maybe have two moves. But it'll be interesting to see what the Yankees do. But I do want to flip it over to the All-Star game because it's coming up here real soon. The Midsummer Classic here. Teams were all announced. Yankees, they got 3 All-Stars. Obviously, we just talked about Cole and Chapman, which, I mean, it was the biggest baseball thing. Just so ironic to have them blow the game against the Mets, and then like an hour later, they're into the All-Star team. Exactly. And then Aaron Judge, who's had a phenomenal season. But they had those 3. To me, no snubs there. But the Mets, DeGrom, he's their only All-Star. He is not going to pitch in the All-Star game. It was announced today. But the Mets kind of have some snubs with Taijuan Walker and Edwin Diaz. And I think Walker, it's kind of the big one here, who has a 2.4 ERA, has pitched really well. And for the Mets, you look at a guy, they signed him to probably be their 4th starter, and he's really been their second or third to DeGrom and Stroman. And he's just been so good. And he's a guy that I definitely want to talk about as kind of maybe, a snub, for this All-Star game, because it's not only, I think, that, look, his stats are obviously really good, but it was just what he means to this Mets team coming, these top 3 guys between Stroman, Walker, and then obviously DeGrom. It's godsend for the Mets. It really is. And, when you look at what he's done, and you kind of look about the what if, because if the Mets didn't sign Walker, Bauer would have probably been. We all know what's happening with him off the field. So you're just, if you're a Mets fan, in an alternate universe, it could have went way wrong. So you're just, so happy that Walker's on this team. He should be rewarded. Even DeGrom said that he should be rewarded. He should take his spot on the team. But again, I honestly feel that he's been such a big part of this Mets team and this resurgence by the Mets. And I hope that, the All-Star, whoever picks these All-Stars to, replace him, I hope that they take DeGrom's word and give it to Walker.
Yeah, I think really part of the reason why he's not an All-Star is he's in the shadow of DeGrom. Yeah. There's no better pitcher in baseball right now. DeGrom takes, a lot of that limelight away from these guys. And then I think Edwin Diaz, I was a little surprised he wasn't, because you look at him in a lot of the games that the Mets win, he's out on the mound in the 9th inning. So I think I want to draw the comparison to Cole Chapman, how usually you look at the star in the front and then the star in the back. And I think DeGrom and Diaz fit that perfectly as well. So I agree. I'm surprised. 2.48 ERA, I think, deserves All-Star status. The shadow of DeGrom definitely, being in his shadow definitely plays a part. But Diaz, I think he's great. He also is just so energetic out there. I think he's fun to watch.
With the trumpets.
Yeah. So I think I agree with both of those picks. DeGrom being the only All-Star on that team, who I believe is 8 games above 500 right now. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you talk about Diaz. I mean, I've been the biggest Diaz supporter since last year, and just his stuff is so good. You knew in 2019 that was an admiration just because his stuff is just – he throws 100, his slider's just filthy. You're like, this guy is not going to be a 5 ERA pitcher. He's just too good. And, we've seen it this year, and just it's so nice for the Mets to have just a lockdown closer. I mean, the Mets had Familia, who had a few good years, but there were so many years of Familia blowing games and, walking the bases loaded. It's so nice not to have that, which, I mean, I don't know if Diaz is an all-star per se, but just his just worth to me as a Mets fan and seeing so many blown leads, you're just like, oh, thank God we got a closer that's good and who could, back up a DeGrom start when he goes 8 innings and, strikes out a billion batters. But it's those guys definitely. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they'll get replaced, but definitely those two. But I mean, also snubs around the league. We were talking earlier about how is Max Scherzer not on this team? A 2.1 ERA. I mean, I don't know if I'm missing something, if you're missing something, but how is Max Scherzer not on the All-Star team right now?
This guy is ridiculous. I mean, I think if you don't call him a top, I guess you could stretch it to 5. I would say 3 pitcher in the last 10 or so years, or maybe even a little less than that. The 2.1 ERA is the lowest of his career. He's days away from his 38th birthday. So he's very, he's getting up there. And I think to be able to do this at that age still is crazy. I think usually the MLB is not about at all the team's record. I know the Nats haven't been spectacular so far this year, but Scherzer deserves it, man. He 12.12 Ks per 9. He's got the stats and he's got obviously the name and the reputation. He's not in it this year. It's the first time since 2013, back in the days when he was a Tiger and was ridiculous. So exactly. I'm surprised he's not in there. The other name I wanted to mention, just because I think it's a dying art, stealing bases, Whit Merrifield, Kansas City Royals second baseman. I watched him in a recent Yankees series just fly around the base path. It's a dying art. That's why I want to see him there. I remember guys like Michael Bourne would make an all-star game. He'd have 60 stolen bases in a season. I don't know if Merrifield gets there, but it's just something that's good to see for the sport.
No, I agree. Stolen base is such an important. Like when you have someone, like especially late in games when they walk and then you could steal second, already have runner in scoring position. I know a lot of teams are moving away from that, but that's something I'd love to see come back, and we'll see. But I think that'll wrap up our whole baseball conversation. I mean, it was always fun to talk about the Mets and Yankees. I mean, this year especially has been really, I think, interesting to talk about these two teams, with obviously the Mets and Steve Cohen taking over, and you see them have some success, and the Yankees obviously not hitting their expectations. But when that comes, you always have something to talk about. But next, we are going to talk about the NBA Finals, which is always an interesting conversation. Suns take game 1 of the series, so definitely be a fun conversation. Chase Dorian will join us for that. But first, we are going to take a quick break. You are listening to One on One Nightly. Welcome back into One-on-One Nightly. I'm Andrew Galata alongside Nick Feta and Chase Doyen. And now, guys, let's get into this NBA Finals series here between the Suns and the Bucks, as the Suns did win Game 1, 118-105 here. CP3, Chris Paul, was outstanding in this game. I'm just so happy for him. 32 points, 9 assists. I mean, he just had a great game. Devin Booker, 27 points. And then DeAndre Ayton, 22 points, 19 rebounds, as he just dominated against this Bucks defense. Giannis in his return, his surprise return, did have 20 points, 17 rebounds. Chris Middleton added 29, but wasn't enough for them to get the win. Chase, we'll start off with you here. Suns win Game 1 kind of decidedly. I know it's only a 13-point game, but the Suns definitely, especially in that second half, they controlled that game. What are your kind of first thoughts about this game and this series now, going into these, now Game 2?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I love Chris Paul personally, so I'm very excited for him to finally 16 years in the league, finally getting his shot. And in the first half, I was watching it. He's a little slow, was kind of off. You can tell the nerves probably getting to him. In the second half, he just took off. It was really, really cool to see. Giannis surprisingly looked as well as I thought, especially when we talked in pre-production that we all personally didn't think he would go that far, but seeing Giannis actually putting up 20 points. I mean, he missed half his free throws, but Giannis has never been a strong free throw shooter. But he looked good in his return.
Giannis being a strong free throw shooter, or Giannis, and that sentence. I would say Giannis has never even been a decent free throw shooter. I know he's coming back from being injured. Got to give the guy credit, of course. I also, again, I don't know how he can shoot when the crowd is counting. That looked terrifying on TV. But I really am always going to have criticism for him in that sense, because he's not the go-to guy to get a bucket in the end, and he can't make his free throws if he's going to draw a foul. That's where I really just have a bone to pick with Giannis Antetokounmpo, because he's so dominant. But if you put him on the line, I watched a stretch. He went to the free throw line 3 times and shot 6 free throws and came away with 3 points. The Suns scored twice in their 2 possessions and outscored Giannis on 6 free throws. It was that easy. So it was, it's not going to work for them if he can't hit his free throws. I don't know if he's got to change his routine, or if he's just, it's a head case, or I don't know how he can listen to the crowd. But if he will not be able to hit free throws down in the end, because he was fouled when the Suns were up 9 to 12 points, to kind of keep that cushion, right? And he was just missing. You can't come away with 1 on 3 separate times, because the Suns can go down, 3-point shot, boom. Just like that, those points are gone. So I'm really never going to be satisfied with Giannis. I think he won't win a championship until he can be that guy to hit the shot or to be able to hit his clutch free throws. It's been a problem all playoffs, and they've really only squeaked by in a lot of games because he hasn't been able to hit.
Or you have someone else, they bring in someone else to hit the clutch shots. That's going to be interesting.
Well, that's Middleton's job.
Exactly, but do you trust in Chris Middleton consistently like that? That's the thing I think with this matchup. I think the Suns are the better team. I think the Bucks are kind of banking on the star power with Giannis, and I agree with you. Like, he's not in that LeBron, or maybe LeBron 2 years ago, where he's the X factor where he can make a worse team beat a better team, go back to the 2016 Cavs series, or KD is another guy, Steph, all those guys that they really make a difference. And everyone talks about it's a star driven league. Yeah, it is. But those guys even take it to the next level, where you can have a significantly worse team, or really see you can have holes on the team, and those guys are going to patch it up. It will be all good. I don't think Giannis is there yet, and that's why I think the Suns are going to take advantage of it, and I think the Suns are going to win this series. I think they're the more, I think they play – look, the Bucks also play well together, but I think the Suns, just their whole team, mantra, Monty Williams, I just really love the way they play basketball. I love a lot of players on their team, and I'm just really rooting for them. I picked them to go to the finals all the way back at the start of the playoffs, and with the Bucks, I had them losing in the first round, and I'll admit my mistake. So I have to be on the Suns bandwagon, because if they don't win, I would probably be, you're talking about how I had a team lose in the first round, win the finals. But that's just another reason for me to root for the Suns. But I mean, I just love CP3. I also really like Devin Booker a lot too. DeAndre Ayton, a lot of people give him flack, and he's came up and he's really, I think all playoffs, he's been very good. And people were calling him, before the year or whatever, a bust compared to the other guys in his draft class. But you look what he's doing now. I mean, this Suns team, they're growing. And like when CP3, when they traded for him, everyone was like, oh, they're not going to do anything. I was like, just watch out for them. Wherever CP3 goes, teams succeed. Yeah. And, I think it's going to matter here in this series, and I think it puts them over the edge. Just the way they play basketball, team basketball. You always have like 4 or 5 guys in double figures, and I think that makes a difference. And with Giannis, I just don't think he's one of those apex top 3 stars that can push a team, really over that mark to win 4 games, in the series.
No, I agree with you. I just watching Giannis play, I just don't see him taking the next step. Like you're right about LeBron, Steph, even Clay at times, KD, all these guys have that extra gear. Giannis just doesn't have it. There's nothing I could see from Giannis. Like I think what was about a year ago, some commentators just play zone defense for Giannis and he can't do anything. He barely shoots threes. He has no handles whatsoever. Watching him try to out dribble a defender at the top of the key is one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in my entire. He's just too big. But it's just the Suns team, like Chris Paul has that extra gear. And Devin Booker's been really up and down these playoffs, but he also has that next gear as well. So that's why I think the Suns, like you said, all in double figures. They just are a better team. I think coaching is a little bit better. Like their stars don't miss free throws. So that's something that just doesn't happen with the Suns team.
They didn't miss a single free throw last night,
no,
to put that in perspective. So also back to Chris Paul, who I think I'll make the take now, will be the finals MVP. I thought so before the series started, so just so it doesn't look like I'm saying it now, but he's the most, I think, efficient player in the league in terms of not the 50, 40, 90 stuff, just how he controls the pace of a game, how he just operates an offense and really settles a team down. The Suns team has little to no playoff experience behind him and Jay Crowder, right? They're young, they're new, but they've got a lot of talent, and when they're put together with Chris Paul, that's the efficiency that comes through. And the scary thing that I noticed is you won't see Chris Paul go for 30-plus a lot of nights, but if he does, his shooting is immaculate. He was unstoppable last night. He was not missing shots. The shots he was taking, I would look and be like, what are you doing? But I thought every time it went up, it had a chance to go in. He's remarkable. He has no fear, no desire to lose, obviously, but he's just a scary player and when he gets going, and he's just so calm and he's a killer really when he's out there in his element, where Booker had a great game as well, but it was clear that the star of that game was Chris Paul. I love Chris Paul just because, like as you said, he always has feels like he has a control, and like that's something that you don't see, and even like the big stars. I mean, I know that you look on the stat sheet, and like as you said, he's not throwing these amazing stats up, but sometimes it goes beyond that. I think, when you look at why the teams do so well around him, whether it be in OKC or, LA or wherever he is, you go back to his time with the then Hornets in New Orleans. His teams always win, and now he's finally getting over, the hump, making a finals. And it's just like the way he controls the game, the way he calms guys down, whatever it is, there's that something extra there that, you can't quantify in a stat sheet. I mean, it really, I think, helps this Suns team. And, I know he's a free agent at the end of the year and everyone's talking about the rumors to him with the Knicks, but like it goes beyond, that stat sheet. And he's a guy that, like, and when you said when he's on, he's scoring 32, you just like, he's still that all-star. He's still that great player that he is. And obviously the age is getting up there, but I mean, still, I think when you look at his veteran leadership, it's something that, obviously his play will probably deteriorate, athleticism deteriorate, but that stuff, it just won't. It probably only get bigger. And I mean, I just want to take a second to talk about him because I know, like, over these last few years, not a lot of people do talk about him, and he's finally getting his moment. So, kudos to him.
Absolutely. He's just one of those guys that just like you were talking about on the score sheet, doesn't have a lot, but you look at every major press release from other players in that locker room, they say how big Chris Paul has been for that locker room. Having that veteran presence, like you said, the leadership of the game, him being a little bit older, he was exactly what the Suns needed when they traded for him. When they traded for him, I was just like you, Andrew. People were kind of doubting it. He's this, he's that, he's old. I'm like, no, the Suns are going to be good, but I didn't know they're going to be great.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna transition here to the Bucks, and I think my reasoning for it is because it was they haven't won besides the Heat series where they swept.
Yeah.
I think it's a relatively known fact, but just to bring it up again, they've lost every single game one of a series that they've played. They got stunned by the Hawks in the conference finals, and the Nets completely blew them out in that game one of the semifinals, and now they lose here in game one on the road. I wasn't really surprised, but what I want to bring up is really how abysmal their defense was. And I don't know if it's... I think really the number one reason is matchups. They are totally outmatched in this series because the mid-range is not dead. I don't care what any analyst or anybody says. The mid-range is not dead because Chris Paul and Booker say so. That's it.
Yeah.
They don't care who will switch on them. They don't care how tough the shot is. They'll shoot it, and they're more often than not going to hit it. I mean, if you put Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis on one of those guys, it's a basket. It's very simple to see. I think then Budenholzer tried for the Bucks to change that up. They, instead of trying to switch on the picks, they tried to get over them, but that didn't work either. Just lead for open shots. Guys couldn't chase. So I don't know what the answer is. That's why I'm curious now what you guys think. I don't know what the answer could be because they tried both things. Obviously, it's got to be a little just. I think the effort on the Bucks end was not as. It wasn't as there, I guess, as it was for the Suns. The energy level, the effort. But I don't know what really the answer could be for these guys because they got another game at home, which I think is going to end in another Suns W. And if they go down 2-0 going home, they still got a chance. But how do they stop the Suns' offense?
That's I think is really interesting. I mean, you just think about. I mean, I think a healthy Giannis will probably help that. You're hoping he gets more healthy. I mean, We'll see, but I think that'll probably help a good amount. I think just when you look at DeAndre Ayton, I mean, he puts the 22 and 19 up. You're really going to put Brook Lopez on him? And I mean, look, this is not Brook Lopez, who's the leading scorer of the Nets, which I found out this this playoff run. But it's just like, when you said the matchups, and I completely agree. It's just DeAndre Ayton, like when it comes down to it, I mean, I just don't know who you're going to put on him. And he's another guy that I think is unsung, and he has a 22 and 19 game. And then, the pick and roll, the way CP3 runs the pick and roll, it's tough to stop. And, when you have an older Brook Lopez, I think that it definitely makes a difference. And, I don't know. It's just, I feel like a healthy Giannis, I think, would help, and we'll see how his progression gets. I mean, we're talking about if there's not that next gear for him, but I think health is going to be a big thing for him. And it's going to obviously, I think he's going to be better than where he is. Hopefully he gets more healthy. We'll have to see. But I think that's what the Bucks are banking on. They're banking on Giannis. They're banking on Chris Middleton. They're banking on Drew Holiday to, become these difference-making stars. And if they can't do that, it's going to be the Suns in 6 games. I mean, I think we can kind of all agree with that if these guys don't step up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just don't, just the pick and roll, they couldn't do anything about it. I don't know how many times I saw DeAndre Ayton full sprint in the paint. Like they couldn't do anything about it. PJ Tucker's too small. Brook Lopez, like you said, is older. What are they going to put Giannis on it? It's just the matchups the Suns team is just so big and so fast and strong. There's nothing the Bucks can really do besides, like you said, probably an effort level, but they're definitely going to try to work some things around, maybe zone wise, but you can't bank on Drew Holiday, who's not nearly as tall as DeAndre Ayton, to say the least, and Giannis and Chris Middleton to put that together. Drew Holiday is the best defender on that team, but he's like 6'4" compared to, I don't even tell how tall is DeAndre Ayton? Like what? He's a 7-footer. There's no way you could possibly put that on Drew Holiday. So it's going to be a defense by committee kind of thing. But that just leaves so many other problems for the Bucks. So
my concern, and almost I'll draw the comparison. It's very similar. The matchups. These guys, the stars who have to go and score, they're usually not a primary defender, except Drew Holiday. That guy does it all. But if you look into the finals, you wouldn't see Curry and Kyrie guarding each other. You'd see J.R. Smith guarding Steph Curry. You see Klay Thompson guarding Kyrie Irving. And that's just the instant comparison I make because you saw those matchups so many years in a row. But those are the types of things where does the balance come in? Because in my opinion, I think Giannis is the perfect, really only logical matchup for Ayton on the roll because Lopez is too slow, way too slow. And PJ Tucker's too small. You can't switch a guard on a big. That's common knowledge. Giannis is really the only option. But then the problem is if he's got to play a pick and roll every single play on defense, where's his energy on offense, especially when his energy is full speed ahead? So,
and he's hurt.
Exactly, and he's already hurt. So that's where I didn't like the decision that he played in game 1, but obviously that was, I think, just adrenaline. Everything felt like he had to be out there for his team. Totally fine, but it is really going to be. I think the matchups are a nightmare in this series as a whole. And even if you can figure something out, I'll keep the Chris Paul praise going. That guy's going to figure out how to beat you again. So I want to switch it to. I'll keep it Suns in 6 is my pick because I think the Bucks are a good enough fundamental team with enough star power to take a couple games. But who knows? The Suns have been just really, really surprising. They beat the Lakers in 6, obviously. 6-game series against the Clippers, and then the sweep of the Nuggets. Who knows? It could be another sweep of another MVP if it really gets to that level of severity where it's just a beatdown. The game last night, we were talking before the show, nowhere near as close as the scoreboard put out. The Bucks put a little run on in the fourth quarter, but they were down 20 at one point in the third. In a finals game, you're down 20, man. That's terrible. You got to keep it really close because then you get a bucket and a stop or a couple big plays, and just like that, you could have the lead. For the Bucks, it was going from 15 to 10 points. So it's interesting dynamic there. I'm curious, really, really curious to see if they can put a stop to the Suns' offense and be able to just figure out pick and roll defense. That's the main thing, like Chase said.
Yeah, and so Nick, you have Suns in 6. Are we going to make that a pick?
Yeah, I'll keep it Suns in 6.
Okay,
I want to be bold and go less games, but I think Suns in 6. It's been a common theme against a lot of good teams this postseason,
sure.
So I'll keep it that way.
Chase, want to get your pick before we move on. Wait, you were going to say Suns in 6?
Yeah, I got Suns. I've honestly had Suns in 6 probably since before the game started. What Nick was saying about like putting guys like J.R. Smith on the stars, but watching Bobby Portis try to guard Chris Paul and then Chris Paul was going like there's nothing they could do. So I want to say Suns in 5. I think Chris Middleton steals a game or two. Suns in 6.
Yeah, look, I feel like you guys saying Suns in 6. I don't really want to pick the Suns in 6.
See, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I don't even know if it'll be Suns in 7, maybe Suns in 5. Like I'm probably right with the Suns in 6, but I'll say Suns in 5 just to change it up a bit. Honestly, I think the Suns team is extremely hot. It's playing just great basketball, and sometimes I feel like in the last few years, because you've just whoever the hot team, you ran into the Warriors or whatever the issue is. We have our producer Alex Volty saying Bucks in 6.
Wrong.
I mean, everyone going. That's the thing. I feel like you have like these Bucks. You have the Bucks believers and you have the Bucks like the complete opposite. They're exactly to me an interesting team. People who either really believe in Giannis and you think he's the guy, and obviously Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday as well, or you're just like these guys. They're not at the level that that apex level as I was talking about, and that's when you get the Suns in 5, Suns in 6, and I don't know. I feel like the hot team will prevail here, and first time in a while maybe because all the Warriors super team and LeBron and the hot team would always run into them. But I think this year it's different, and I think the hot team prevails. But before we wrap up our NBA talk, I do want to get into some non-NBA Finals news about the Hawks, who have Nate McMillan, their coach. The Hawks take the interim tag off of him, and now he's going to be their full-time head coach, and he obviously deserves it. Hawks go to the Eastern Conference Finals. They had a great second half of the year. You have Trae Young looking like he's becoming a superstar. He's looking like a guy that maybe can reach that, that next level of a superstar, which is so important for them. But, you look at the Suns' history, and Nick, I want to start off with you. And you had that, I think they won 60 games, like 2015, 2014, and they had 5 All-Stars, and then you didn't hear from them again. So is this Hawks, is this run, is this a one-year blip anomaly, or is this team here to stay?
Well, it's totally different in this situation for a couple reasons. I'll start with the youth of this team. Yeah. Those old teams were Horford, Millsap, T, Core, kind of older guys in their late 20s, early 30s, who then went their separate ways, right? But this team, I see it all over the place, how young they are. And I right now, I still hate the Hawks because of what they did to the Knicks, but you can't deny the talent and youth that they have. Collins is young. Trae Young, of course, young. Herter's young. DeAndre Hunter's young. Cam Reddish is young. Even Capella's relatively young still. They are a threat. Yeah, I absolutely think they will be here to stay. Maybe not to the conference finals or even NBA finals in the next couple of years, but they're definitely a team that's shown they can do damage. They're such a modern team. I've said this before on the show, where they play really hard and they shoot the lights out of the ball, and you have a combination like that, it tends to work out. Trae Young, phenomenal shooter, phenomenal playmaker, and he's got guys around him, and they're only going to get better. They're just so young. They stun Philly, not necessarily stun the Knicks beating them, but take
Knicks
care
were
of the Knicks
favored in that
East,
series, though.
I can sadly say. But, they had a great run, and I give a lot of the credit to Nate McMillan because the record that they had once he took over was phenomenal. So I really think, they could be a threat.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I want to call them like a finals contender, if that's what you're asking. Just because, it's just like the Heat last year. They were great, but they were nowhere near a finals contender this year. Bubble changes things, obviously, but I would definitely say they will be a threat in the league to watch out for a while.
I have to disagree with you on that one.
Wow,
I just think that like teams like the Hawks with like a bunch of young guys have all this potential. It seems more often than not when they play with house money and they overperform, they always fall flat on their face. It seems like a thing that just happens more often than not. Like Trae Young, bona fide star, but I just don't like see every guy on that team going to the next level. Like Herter, maybe John Collins, maybe. There's just something about the Hawks. There's teams that play with a lot of energy. Like the Hawks were getting beat the first half of the season. Then they just like started like something about them just had this magical, almost Cinderella run to beat the Knicks, to beat the Sixers. It's just something about the team. Maybe they'll be good in like 2 or 3 years. I love the McMillan hire. I really, really do. I just don't see them hit that next step yet. I think they need like one more big piece because this league is not just a single star league. It's all duos and trios now. I think Trae Young needs one more piece to really get over the edge. But I believe in Trae Young. I think he's, I think a lot of people gave him a lot of flack for being traded for Luka and Luka doing all the crazy stuff he does. But Trae Young finally got to have his moment, especially with like, I know you guys are Knicks fans, but all the stuff about him looking back at the crowd and, Trae Young is balding. Like he really just, I think he's got the next gear. So
yeah, like what you were saying. First of all, Trae Young. I mean, look, as a Knicks fan, I'm not too fond of Trae Young, but what I will say is you give him a lot of credit for being the villain in Madison Square Garden, and I think people, like that doesn't happen really in today's basketball, where you have one guy, against an entire arena, where you get the fans saying that, cheering that the guy's balding, and to that level, like you got to give him credit for taking on that, and his play, like he was able to talk the talk and walk the walk, which is something that not every guy can do. So you give him credit there. I agree that he does have that next level, but I don't think that this team, as constructed, will make another Eastern Conference final. I think they need another star, and you could talk about Kevin Huerter, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of these guys, Huerter, Collins, Capella, they're all role players or average, above average players that maybe can for a few games have spurts of good games, but at the end of the day, they're not guys you're going to count on as stars. They need that next piece. I don't know who's that going to be. Not 100% sure. Obviously, we'll see. But I think that this team needs that next big star, as you were saying, Chase, to just really help Trae Young. Maybe it's a 2 guy. Maybe it's a big guy. Maybe they're able to get a guy like maybe Karl Anthony Towns or someone like that can play really well. Kind of get that big man with Trae Young, and obviously Trae Young and his passing ability, scoring ability. I do think they need that, another star to really hit that next step. If they don't, I think they'll be solid, play a playoff team, but not, an Eastern Conference, final team of, an NBA finals team. I just don't think, Trae Young can do it all himself, really.
And then I almost then want to draw the question of, can they keep the unit together while adding a piece? Because I know John Collins had a pretty solid postseason run. He's due for a contract. He's going to want some money. You're going to have these guys running out of contracts. I don't know what Lou Williams' contract is. I'm not sure how much he cares about the money, but I know he's a guy who's been severely underpaid in his career. Maybe he wants money. Maybe he goes there elsewhere. So it's the logistics of a franchise, of course, have to come into play. But also, like you said, it could be good news. Maybe, okay, you say, never mind, John Collins, we won't sign you. Have fun somewhere else. We'll sign someone else with the money we have and see how that works. I am very curious as well. It's just the offseason in the NBA is always so exciting because there's at least one move a summer, I think, where it's like, wait, who went where? So who knows? Maybe the Hawks have one of those moments this summer.
Who knows? I mean, I agree with you about John Collins actually being probably the one to go because I do not see them getting rid of Huerter because finding a shooter like that is so hard in the NBA. I mean, you can always find a big man who could like stretch the floor and do a bunch of good things, but yeah, they just really need that extra dude. And, like you said, the NBA offseason is always fun. I completely forgot Kemba went to the Thunder like the other day. I checked Bleacher Report. I'm like, oh yeah, he did do that. Oh.
That's yeah. I mean, there's always like they've already had that. Oh, he went there with the Kemba, as you said. Like I completely forgot about it too. I was like Kemba to the Thunder. I was like, I gotta double check myself. But it will definitely, this whole offseason, this finals definitely should be really fun. But next, we'll talk about the Stanley Cup Finals, where the Lightning are currently winning this series 3-1, and we'll see if they can wrap it up tonight. But first, we're going to take a quick break. You are listening to One on One Nightly. Welcome back into One on One Nightly. I'm Andrew Galata alongside Nick Feta and Chase Doyen. And guys, now let's get into some NHL talk, specifically the Stanley Cup Finals here. And Game 5 right now, the Lightning are battling with the Canadiens. Still no score in the second period, but the Lightning, they have that 3-1 series lead. We're up 3-0. Canadiens win Game 4. And this whole series, I mean, it's just been a domination basically by the Lightning. And, you know, as someone who watched that whole Lightning Islander series, it was a battle. You know, it's really all playoff hockey. It's usually a battle to the end, to overtime. It's usually really, really fun. But Lightning right now, they outscoring the Canadiens 16-8 here in the first 4 games. And obviously they didn't score in this 5th game so far. And it just right now, it's not been that close. Obviously Canadiens do steal Game 4, but the Lightning between Kucherov and Point has been so good. Tyler Johnson and Yanni Gord, Stamkos. So you just go up and down their lineup. I mean, they're just, you know, so dominant, so deep. Chase, I'll start off with you. What's your thoughts on this series here? I know it's 0-0 in this second period, but do you think the Lightning, they finish out tonight?
I have no idea. Like, I was so convinced on like going into this thinking Tampa's got it, but I started thinking about like all the years Tampa has choked, and it's still the original core. Like, yeah, they won last year, but they blew it to the Capitals. They got swept by Columbus in the first round like a couple of years ago. Like, that's the only hope Montreal has, and Montreal is one of those teams that like, for some reason, they just won't go away. And Tampa's their biggest challenge yet. But the fact that they even escaped Game 4 is crazy to me. So, like, I want to say Montreal just for, like, the hope of hockey because I want them to keep going. But now kind of rethinking it, like, just now, I think Tampa's got it. Tampa's just such a deep team. And Montreal's biggest strength is their goalie, but Tampa's goalie, Vasilevsky, is much better. So it's one of those things like teams like Montreal who play with a lot of heart, they play with a lot of this, but they don't actually have skilled guys. More often than not, that storybook run always comes to an end when they come to a team who's individually more skilled, better coached. They want to win the cup in Tampa for the first time in over 15 years. Like, they want this bad. So I think Tampa's got it.
Yeah, I think I have to agree just because of how dominant they've been. Obviously, the Islanders pushed them to 7, but they were able to come through, and now this Stanley Cup for the Stanley Cup here, it looks just, it's been a domination the entire time. I'm surprised
Absolutely.
it got to a game 5, and it really only did because of the overtime period. So that's something too that I always will find interesting. You get to that overtime period as kind of that underdog team. Who knows? So if this game somehow stays 0-0 once the buzzer sounds from the third period, maybe they've got a chance in Montreal. But then the real problem is, though, I mean, come on, you got to come back from down 3-0. No one's ever done that. As much as I want to have hope from 3-1 talks with Cleveland and all that, it's just not the same here. The Lightning are just so good. From this playoff hockey that I've been seeing out of them, it just doesn't look like they're beatable. I'm surprised they lost one the other night in Game 4. I would love to see it get extended just because, I mean, who wouldn't want to watch more playoff hockey? But I don't think it's even remotely possible here. Who knows? Score stays low and they go to overtime. I think the Canadians will take it, but the Lightning are going to score at some point, right? That's what I would make my guess, but I think it should be over tonight. But I would love, as just a fan of sports, to see it be extended.
Yeah, I think the Lightning are going to win. Probably here. I mean, they're not winning. The Canadians aren't winning 4 straight. I mean, as much as I mean, like the team, like so the Islanders, like they kind of play similar. I think the Islanders are better than the Canadians, but I didn't think they played kind of similar hockey. As you were saying, just trying to grind it out, do that type of stuff. And it was in that series. Like, to watch the Islanders win one game was like, win one game in a row. And that game went to 7. It was a great series. But that was like, it took like 5 years off your life for them to win these games in overtime. To win 4 straight against the Lightning, that's, to me, it's just not happening. And like, you were saying, Chase, that, you have the Canadians and their best strength into defense. And, they got Carey Price in net. And you have Vasilevsky, who's like one of the best goaltenders in hockey, better than them. It's like, at a certain point, it's tough to win. When you put yourself in a 3-0 hole, it's tough to win 4 straight games. I mean, it's probably, just this now maybe a dynasty that we may be starting to see with the Lightning. And it's just like, I just don't see the Canadians, winning 4 straight. But, I guess you never know with playoff hockey, but I bet the Lightning finish it off tonight.
The fact that they even won Game 4 was off a broken play. Like, they had the lead, it was 1-0, then 2-1, then 2-2. Tampa's always kept coming back, and then in overtime, Montreal had no business winning that game. Absolutely not. It was one of those, like, Vasilevsky kind of like looked the other way and went in. Montreal's like, oh wait, we won. Oh my gosh! And then like they couldn't believe it, and that can't happen multiple times.
I saw that scene outside of their arena where everyone was going nuts. I mean, the Canadians, they just love their hockey.
We did it. Like, they didn't know what to do, and so bringing your point to the Islanders, if hypothetically, like, if the Islanders were to beat the Lightning, the Islanders would definitely beat the Montreal Canadiens. The Eastern Conference, or whatever conference they had, was so much stronger than anything Montreal put out. Maybe Vegas could have been, but I genuinely feel like the Islanders could have taken this probably 5 games. It's just, you can't get over. Tampa's just too deep. For every like good player they have that the Islanders had, Tampa had a one that was like slightly better, more experienced, better coached. Like, the Toronto teams, like you were saying earlier, Andrew, are usually well coached. They always have been. It's just Tampa they're just.
I mean, the talent. I mean, at a certain point. I mean, how many players you think, like, from just, if you're not an Islanders fan, can you name on the Islanders besides like Barzal or whatever? Like, for the Lightning, you got the names, and you got great players, and also they're great, well coached, as you were saying. Like, I mean, they may be building. Look, they just won the Stanley Cup last year, so it's not like this team's coming out of nowhere. Like, I mean, and that's just, I think makes it even more impressive, their run. But I definitely think that's kind of the most, when you talk about the what if with the Islanders, as you were saying, it's just like, I think they'd be in a similar position. And, what kind of puts, I guess, a salt in the wound, like, for fans like my brother, who's just such a big Islanders fan, it's you play without your captain Andrews to lead the whole playoffs. And like, would he in that Game 7, would he have been the difference to score 1 goal to tie the game up, bring it to overtime? Because, just how close that game was. Really the only blowout was like the 8-0 game, which my brother went to, obviously that's the game he went to. I was talking to you guys about it earlier, but that's kind of, the situation. The Islanders, they played their hearts out. And like, I think also, last game in the Coliseum finally for good. Like obviously the last time they did it, they ended up coming back, but this time it's for good. They're moving to Belmont, but it's just like, you may have been getting ready for a parade and, out in Long Island, and, for the Islanders, it's just, it wasn't meant to be. And, you have the Lightning, who are now, one step away, maybe a few goals away right now too, hoisting up back-to-back Stanley Cups.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Nick, I just cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, Andrew, non-biased, do you truly believe that Anders Lee would be that next step? Like, if you weren't an Islanders fan, if you were to look at the team from a completely different point of view, do you think he has what it takes to bring them over the hump to beat Tampa in that game 7?
That's the thing. It's just one goal. Like, maybe as a series, like, I don't know, like, I don't really know. Like, we'll never know. Like, I think could he have been that difference maker to score one goal? Maybe not, but it's just like it's tough to be one goal away and lose 1-0. It wasn't like it was such a hard fought game, and it was like that brand of just physical playoff hockey. It's just like that's, I think, the disappointing part. But I mean, look, to them to get to that point, I think a lot of people probably, being like an unbiased hockey fan, you're probably like, oh, for them to get to that point was probably pretty like they probably played their potential. But to play without your captain, maybe if you never know, like it's one goal, like, when you think about get to the nitty gritty down to it. I mean, the Lightning are just such a good team, as you said, though. They're just such a juggernaut. And when this Islanders team, they have a lot of, hard decisions. They're up against the cap. It's just like, it's a tough situation. Is like, that's the way you're losing. Now you have to deal with, you don't know if you're ever going to be back, especially for them to play the Lightning the year before too. So it's like a complete, like a carbon copy of last year. I think that adds maybe a little more salt to the wound, but it's going to be really interesting to see the offseason out on Long Island, and also, to see kind of where they try to, take their next steps to try to, really over, because really the Lightning are the only team that they couldn't beat. They got over the Bruins, they got over, the Penguins, they got over all these teams. Lightning have been that one just, kryptonite, and we'll see what they can do to really, I don't know if the Lightning are just so good. It's difficult to see what move they can make to just, to give them one more goal, more consistent scoring for sure. But, the way the Islanders play hockey, it's just, the Lightning are that good. It'll be very difficult. It'll be interesting to see, though. Maybe these two teams are in a similar playoff series down the line this year and in a few years. It'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah, and Andrew, I'll go back to the 8-0 game that you mentioned, which I still am just baffled by. But I guess it's kind of make a summarizing point for myself here is it's just the sheer dominance that this team has shown. Winning a playoff game 8-0, winning a hockey game 8-0, regardless, is very, very difficult. Do that in the playoffs, okay, come on. Even Game 3, I remember watching of the Stanley Cup. The Lightning, came out second period right away, 2 quick goals. And just like that, they go from 2-1 to 4-1. And it's just, I remember almost like it was so quick. I was like, did that just happen now all of a sudden? I'm like, oh my God, I think this game's over. And they ended up taking it 6-3. It's just really a show of just a testament to their I guess kind of just the overpoweredness of that team. The defense is phenomenal. Their offensive attack, from what I saw, was just scary. I don't know how you can slow them down. And tonight, who knows, in a half hour, maybe whenever this game is over, the Lightning could be back-to-back champs.
Who knows? I mean, it's one of those things, like when I think about the Islanders series, I think, and when they lost, I think about the offseason. Like, what is it going to take for the Islanders to get over the next step? Like, Andrew, you couldn't put it any better. They have some serious cap decisions they have to figure out. The number one thing is letting Varlamov go. He's an older goalie. It happens all the time. Sorokin was okay in his playoff debut, but the biggest thing, you have to re-sign Barzal. You have to keep him. He's the heart and soul of the team. He's a speed, and Anders Lee. You have to keep those two guys.
Barzal, he's crazy. He's just like, he's hot knife going through butter. Like you would think like what he does, on ice is like what some guys they can't even do on, the grass. It's ridiculous the way he plays, and he's a fun player, especially like the way the Islanders play, which is so muddy it up, physical, and like for him to just slice through guys. It's like
end to end.
He makes it look so easy. But before, we stop our hockey talk, I do have an update from the game. Lightning did score a goal, and Ross Colton gets the goal for the Lightning here, and it was unassisted. So Lightning now up 1-0, and now with 2 minutes about left in the second period, what are they now? 22 minutes away from hoisting that Stanley Cup in Tampa Bay. Any final thoughts, before we move on here?
All our predictions seem to be right, I guess.
Coming true, yeah. Lightning in 5.
Yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles in life, I guess. That was about what I was the fact it's not 4-0 is a surprise to me, but 1-0 is about what I expected. So
the Canadians, they definitely, they're giving them everything they got, and we'll have to see. Kind of maybe they come back, but 22 minutes Lightning are from hoisting the Stanley Cup here. But to finish off the show, we're going to move over to like a news and notes segment. We talk about the match. We talk about Wimbledon. We talk about the Euros in soccer. But first, we are going to take a quick break. You are listening to One on One Nightly. Welcome back into One on One Nightly. I'm Andrew Galata alongside Nick Fada and Chase Adoyan. And guys, we're going to finish off the show with some news and notes. And this is definitely going to be an interesting segment. Kind of just going to go around the horn, a few different topics. And first, I want to start off with the match, golf. I always love talking about golf. It's one of my, instead of the four major ones, it's kind of the one quirky one that I follow. But Bryson DeChambeau, Aaron Rodgers, which we all know Mr. Rodgers with all season stuff that he's going through. And then obviously, you have Brady and Mickelson coming off of his major championship win, Brady coming off of the Super Bowl win, but DeChambeau, Rodgers, they get the better of Brady and Mickelson. They win 7 holes, and then Brady and Mickelson only won 3 holes. I mean, these events I think are kind of fun because you always get the personal side. Like you get Aaron Rodgers in a golf cart, and you have, I forgot who asked him it, but he's like, "Are you playing for the Packers next year?" Just straight up out of nowhere, yeah. And then Rodgers needs to answer the question. So those are, you get those moments. I think last year it was Peyton and Tiger Woods, obviously before Woods got injured, and it was basically Tiger was telling him how to like where to putt the ball. It was the funniest thing. And he's like, just putt to this spot right here and it will go in. And then Peyton does it, it goes in. It's all that funny stuff. I know it's very, low stakes and whatever, but to me, to see athletes like that, it's always, really fun, Nick. I mean, like that's something that, obviously it's not the NBA finals or even a Subway series, but it's just always fun to see athletes just be guys hanging around, hitting, playing golf. It's always really fun.
Yeah, it's just pure entertainment. I mean, I remember I walked into the living room and I saw it was on and I stopped. I was like, oh, I forgot. I got to watch this now. I remember, I think it was Charles Barkley asked him, so straight up. That's where he's just so funny to me. But straight up, so, all right, you're playing, so like week whatever, and the Bears playing, and he goes, I'm just having a good time. I'm just out here having a good time. Repeated the same line over and over. You love it. And my guess is Rodgers will be back there. It's just he doesn't want to deal with any of it. It is really just the guys getting out there and having some fun. I will say I was happy to see Brady lose because Rodgers got a little payback on him, I guess, for maybe not as big of payback as he might have wanted. But, he got some payback for that conference championship loss. I also found it very funny. There's a video, Brady missing a putt, and he was not happy. It was cool to hear the guys mic'd up, and it was also really cool to me to hear the pros, DeChambeau and Mickelson, kind of just hear their methodology on how they go about. Golf is almost a science to them. The calculations of the wind, the angle, the how the greens look. It's just so much goes on in their heads to just make their swing look so simple and pretty. Something I wish I could do with my own swing, but it's awesome to see. It's just a very entertaining event. The match, it should be something that goes on for years to come.
My swing needs work too, so I kind of agree with you on that. But kind of piggyback what Andrew was saying, and like you see, like Brady and Rodgers are two of the most competitive guys in the NFL. They've been like that for a really, really long time. They both can be very cold, prone to outbursts. It's actually like really nice to kind of see them like joking around and like just they get frustrated in golf just like we do. It really humanizes them. So I like it a lot. Do you see DeChambeau like just roof that drive? I forget what hole it is, but it went like it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Like
he's ridiculous. And then you have the him and Koepka rivalry that, it's just those two guys, they're just
more drama.
Drama, which is like, I think those guys actually do not like each other, which I think is interesting for a sports rivalry. But they both drive the ball. It's insane. And DeChambeau, the way he makes it's so easy when you drive the ball that far. I mean, it's like, when I drive and it goes into the rough or like whatever, it's like, you're like, how do these guys do it? But the one thing I will say is that playing with someone like in Rodgers and Brady's case, when you're playing with like a professional, playing someone with really good, when I played high school golf, I played with one of these kids and he was just ridiculously good. And like when you have someone like that, basically, you could follow up his shots, exactly all the right angles. It makes it easier, which is just like my best golf scores were in high school during those those times I played with him, just because he's giving me all the lines and everything. But it's always fun to watch. It's like, as you said, humanizes them. Brady, like I remember watching it last year and he was hooking a few drives into the rough and into the trees, and you're like, oh, I do that too. So Brady's human, so that's always really fun to see. But next, I do want to get into a little more serious topic with Wimbledon and guys obviously caring a lot about, with the outcome of the event, obviously with, guys' careers. And you talk about, Djokovic and, what he's doing, I think is just insane. And, he's getting to a point here at Wimbledon, wins in straight sets. Basically, he won in the quarterfinal straight sets, won in the fourth round straight sets, and watching him, play his craft and do his craft, it's really insane to watch. I mean, it was something that, like, I'm not a big tennis fan, but like I even turned on, I was like, wow, this guy's really good. And, he advances to the semifinals. You have the number 2 player in the world, Daniil Medvedev. He lost in 5 sets on Monday. And then you have Federer. He loses as well in the quarterfinals. So with Federer out, the number 2 player in the world out, it's kind of looking like a crash course between Djokovic and a Wimbledon title, which would give him 20 Grand Slam titles, which would tie him with Federer. And I think everyone talking about Federer right now with, just him, basically he's 39 years old. And, he's definitely, I think, obviously at 39, you're going to take a step back. But for him not to, make a semifinal, definitely a little surprising, I guess. But Chase, we'll start off with you. Like, any thoughts about, Wimbledon right now going into the semifinals? Djokovic looking like he's going to take home another Grand Slam, and Federer, is his time up, in, tennis of being that dominant figure?
I think so. It's just one of the things in all sports. Like, people have the time that comes and goes. I mean, Federer's not going to take that big of a step back. Like, he's still performing at a high level, being 39 years old, and he turns 40 in a month, and he's still right in the thick of it with a lot of the Wimbledon guys. But I think one thing that casual tennis fans like myself, and probably even hardcore tennis fans, people take for granted how good Djokovic actually is. Like, this dude is just a machine. He gets on the court, he does what he needs to do, and it seems like he just came out of nowhere too. Genuinely. So I don't think Federer is going anywhere anytime soon, but I think he'll take, just like, if he's at an 8 right now, he'll be at like a 7.5 to a 7, just like on the low, so to speak. What about you, Nick? What do you think?
Yeah, it's weird to me to see Federer out. There's just these guys, Federer, Djokovic, they're just such prominent names, the names of tennis, arguably. And I think the athletes that these guys are, to be able to do what they do so consistently, I think is so underrated in all of sports. But seeing Federer out, I was shocked, and I didn't realize he was 39. I knew he was getting older, but hopefully it's not the last you see of him, because anytime a legend like that retires, it's maybe not necessarily a sad day in sports, but a monumental day to say the least. Djokovic, though, I think I don't think there's a way he loses, right? I would have loved to see those two match up, but I think he's getting there. He's obviously the number one, and he's just dominant. He has been, continues to be, just so many accolades going towards his name. I think, Andrew, you hit it on the head. I would imagine he goes all the way with maybe not with ease, but he's going to get there, and he's going to have another title under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets number 20, that puts him with Federer, puts him with Nadal too, and you start talking about legacies. And I think that's the thing. You start talking about who, out of these three guys. Because I think, especially in our, everyone knows Federer and Nadal, and now Djokovic kind of came out of nowhere, like as you guys were saying. Like, he also, like, he's very, like, quiet, doesn't really, say much in the media, just does his thing, and then wins another title. That's just kind of, what he's doing. But you start talking about, if he wins number 20, and then who knows how many more he's going to get. And it'll be interesting to see it when it's all said and done, to kind of see how he's kind of compared to Federer, compared to Nadal. And we'll see, maybe Federer gets more and they battle for a few years. That would definitely be, I think, good for the sport too, to kind of see that legacy battle. And again, I mean, I looked it up when doing some research, and Djokovic has only been playing for since 2007, which is just insane to see the pace that he's on. And we'll see kind of how his legacy ends up, how he compares to Federer. It's going to be definitely very interesting. But to wrap up the show, I wanted to get to one more here news piece, and it's about the Euro 2020 soccer here, and the final is set. You had Italy defeat Spain in PKs, and then England defeated Denmark 2-1 in extra time. And Italy looking for its first Euro championship since 1968, which is definitely a long time ago. England was one of the favorites, still is one of the favorites. They got their home crowd, at their disposal, which I thought was kind of interesting. They're playing in Wembley Stadium, and then that must be very difficult to overcome that. Harry Kane, he scored the game-winning goal, and he's obviously the heart and soul of that team. But Nick, what's your thoughts here going here to this final between these two teams?
I think the Italian in me is a little biased here. I've never been a huge soccer fan, but times when it's country versus country coming together, these big events, how do you not love it? So I've been following Italy. I've been seeing the miraculous run they've been on. I'm hoping they can be the underdogs and come away with it. It's one game, and for all the marbles, right? You got to hope they can take it. I know England has just been so good, but I want to pick Italy because it brings out the kind of energy in you as a fan that sometimes you forget is there when it's an entire country playing. You don't realize how many people are supporting and rooting for that team, which is in reality a whole nation. So it's very exciting. I'm hoping it's a great game. My pick and hope is for Italy to come away with it, of course, but I think it'll be exciting regardless.
Yeah, my pick and hope is also Italy as well, not being Italian in any way, shape, or form. I just think Italy's a better team. They just have had better runs, and it took a very controversial penalty for England to kind of get past Spain, and I just think Italy just has the pieces they need to win. So,
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be very interesting. I mean, I know all the soccer fans out in Europe are definitely going to be looking at this, and just wanted to shout out Denmark for their amazing run, and the rallying cry with Christian Eriksen, who's recovering from cardiac arrest, and the way they were able to overcome that must be so hard to have one of your fellow teammates suffer from cardiac arrest on the field. This is just something that it was just to hear that story was definitely great. But I think with all that said, it is time to wrap up the show. Thank you to all of our viewers for sticking with us. We covered a lot of sports tonight, and I definitely had a great time. These nightly shows, they always go way too quick for me. But thank you to our producer, Alex Wolves, who kept the lights on for us all night. Always, he's the absolute best. Our sports director at WFUV is Bobby Ciaffardini. Thank you to Dylan Balsamo for giving us an update from the Mets game earlier in the program. So for my partners, Nick Fada and Chase Doyen, I'm Andrew Galata saying get some sleep and have a great rest of your night. One-on-One Nightly is a production of WFUV Sports.